Hi there, everyone. It's 11:29, so I'm starting and just gonna hopefully handle a couple housekeeping items as we get underway today. If you are here for future-proof your life, smart planning for health, wealth, and legacy, you're in the right place. Each of our presenters, Attorney Colleen Bratkovich, she's a partner with Zachariah Brown and Bratkovich. Financial advisor Jodi Amos with Four Rivers, and then Medicare specialist Liz Kennon, are all going to talk for a little bit, and then in the end, we're leaving some time for questions, a little Q&A. If by chance you have a pressing question throughout the presentation, you can type it in the Q&A. I'm going to monitor that throughout the presentation. This will be recorded, so we will have it up on our website for anyone, if you want to share it, if you know someone who couldn't make it or someone who could benefit from this webinar, definitely let them know. It will be up on our website, zachbrownlaw.com, and I'm assuming that the other ladies may do the same. So in the interest of everyone's time, I'm going to get everything started. I'm going to start with partner Colleen Bratkovich. Colleen, take it away.
Thank you, Carrie, and welcome everybody. I'm very pleased to be here with Liz and Jodi, and I think this is going to be a good use of your lunch hour if you're joining us at lunchtime. But we're talking about future-proof your life, planning for your health, wealth, and legacy, all areas that we often maybe are neglecting in the day-to-day rush of trying to take care of ourselves and our families and our careers. But talking about what are some basics that we can be doing today with the thought of moving into retirement in the future and planning for what's coming down the road. But just talking about the basics today, and we'd like to make it interactive. Carrie said about asking questions. So if you have those, you can either put them in the box, save them for the end. But we'll be happy to go through those as well. So just quickly about our firm. We have experienced attorneys in Pennsylvania and in the state of Florida. Our offices span both Pennsylvania and Florida. We have offices in the Pittsburgh area. I'm speaking to you today from our Murraysville office, which is in Delmont. On the east side of the city, we have an office in Peters Township in the south of the city, and we also have a satellite space in Cranberry, so we can visit our friends in the northern areas of the city, as well as our office in Bonita Springs, which is in the Naples area, Southwest Florida. So these are some of our attorneys who are available to help work with you. All right, so what does our firm do? We help families, we guide families. We help families who are starting out their journey with estate planning. So basic wills, trusts, powers of attorney, kind of getting our basics underway, which is what we're going to talk about mostly today. We do help families with estate administration and probate when a loved one passes away. We do elder law. So that is the area of law that encompasses Medicaid planning, veterans benefit planning, planning for somebody's long-term care needs. The reason that that's important is because long-term care is extremely expensive if you don't know anything about it. So we want to make sure that we are providing families guidance about how they can be protecting and preserving their assets, their net worth in the event that they have a long-term care need. And along with that is special needs planning and guardianship. So special needs planning often goes along with elder law, even though we're not always planning for individuals who are elderly, but many of the benefits programs are identical with regards to qualification and maintaining those benefits with regard to your finances and trying to help guide families. Guardianships also for individuals who maybe did not come to this webinar and did not put their basic steps in place to be able to protect themselves became incapacitated in some way later in life and needed somebody to be able to make decisions for them. And they did not have powers of attorney. So we hope that that's not you because you're coming here today. Why is it important to work with an elder law attorney? And how are we different from regular estate planning attorneys? But as of 2025, there are between 1.2 and 1.3 million residents in nursing homes in the United States. And 70% of people, so Medicare tells us that 70% of people who are 65 or older are going to need long-term care at some point in their life. Okay, so now not everybody's going to live in a nursing home permanently, but the average stay is a little over 3 years. So for all those people who maybe end up in a nursing home for 6 weeks of rehab, there's somebody else who's living there for 5, 6 years or more. And by 2050, it's estimated that up to 15 million people in the US will require long-term care support services. Okay, we have an aging population and we are living longer. It doesn't always mean that we are living better. So it's really going to probably become even more of a crisis than it already is over the next 30, 40, 50 years. And the impact is generational. The financial burden of long-term care is significant. So it's not only affecting the seniors that are living it right now, but also multiple generations of families, because, we want to create generational wealth, right? We want to have a little nest egg to, pass on. And this is more Jodi's realm of expertise, but, we want to have something to pass on to the next generation. And when we're using up all the assets, taking care of somebody, or we're using them all paying for nursing home expenses, long-term care expenses, there isn't money to pass on to the next generation. So, grandma requiring long-term care and bleeding through all of her net worth means that there's nothing for her to leave to her children, and then they don't have as much to be able to build off of to leave something to their children. So it really is generational, the impact that long-term care has on our finances and our net worth. So talking about 5 essential estate planning documents that we want to consider, like I said, the last will and testament, durable financial power of attorney, durable healthcare power of attorney, living will, and for some folks, that revocable or irrevocable trust is going to be important. And as we always say, all estate planning documents are not created equal. Okay, so general estate planning attorneys, it's not that they are doing something wrong. It's not that they're doing something bad. It's just that there are different goals at different stages of your life. Okay. So when we are talking about future proofing our estate plan, we want to focus on an elder law focused estate plan, where we're not just so concerned about, okay, what happens as assets pass, or what happens as, trying to avoid taxes. Okay. The truth of the matter is that a long-term care need is going to cost your family a whole lot more than inheritance taxes ever will. Okay. And not being able to do what we need to do to protect money is going to be extremely expensive to your family. So we want to transition those estate plans as we get older to an elder law focused estate plan that touches on long-term care needs, what long-term care costs, and what assets might be exposed to nursing home expenses. Okay, so that elder focused last will and testament or trust, the elder focused durable financial power of attorney, the elder focused durable healthcare power of attorney, and living will. We want to make sure that your estate plan is meeting your needs now and in the future. Moving to my next slide. Okay, so just quickly, because I don't want to take up a ton of time today, I'm trying to keep my eye on my clock here. But when we're doing elder law planning for spouses, we have to anticipate there could be the potential that our spouse may be in a nursing home or receiving government provided services and supports at the time of our death. So it's not as simple as just to say, hey, when I die, everything to my spouse, or, they die, everything comes to me. That's what we call the sweetheart will. And so we often refer to it as unsweethearting the sweetheart will. We want to take into account that we could have a spouse who's in a nursing home. We want to be able to protect that money for our children. We don't want it going to pay nursing home expenses. We want to keep Medicaid eligibility in force. It's, even not just about the money, it's about the ongoing need for Medicaid to continue, for services to continue. And when folks receive an inheritance that upsets those services, then that's, problematic in many areas. So we want to make sure that there's flexibility in those wills, that it does say, okay, everything to my spouse, but if my spouse is in a nursing home, or if my spouse is on Medicaid home care, or it's likely that they're going to require care, that my executor has the flexibility to be able to disinherit that spouse, put money aside into a special needs trust for that spouse. So being able to shift those assets around and plan for the possibility that that healthy spouse might pass away first. Okay, so just a few steps. And if it doesn't apply at the time of your death because your spouse isn't in a nursing home and doesn't need Medicaid, well, then they can inherit from you. Everything is still the same way, but just putting that extra language in there really can go a long way to protecting your family. Beneficiary designations are equally as important. because our will actually can control a very small portion of our net worth in a lot of families. Okay. It might mean that, because your beneficiary designations are going to take priority over your will. So at the time of your death, you might not have a whole lot passing under that will. So we want to make sure the beneficiary designations are saying the same thing that our will does. I mean, they don't have to say that, but we just want to make sure that if we do expect everything to pass the same way as it is in our will and by beneficiary designation, that those things line up. Are we going to unintentionally disinherit kids because we didn't understand the consequences of just, putting one child on the beneficiary designation because it was easier? This kid's address I know, and the other one I'm going to have to ask them for it, and I don't want to take the time when I'm filling out the form. They'll all split it up in the end. And I'm sure Jodi can tell you lots of horror stories about, things like IRAs or tax qualified, tax deferred annuities, and expecting one child to take the tax hit to divide up all the assets between their siblings. Okay, so we want to make sure that that's part of our plan. And making sure that we're updating those beneficiary designations if we make changes to our will or our trust, or it was all for nothing because the assets are still going to pass the same way if we don't update those designations. So extremely important. We don't want a spouse who's in the nursing home to be the beneficiary of anything. So your retirement accounts, even kids, we talk about that. You have a child who's single, maybe they put mom or dad as their beneficiaries. They're on their retirement accounts, they're on their life insurance. And I can't tell you the number of times that I'm seeing this with children are passing away before their parents, and kids are inheriting, parents are inheriting their children's assets when they pass away. And that's messing up their Medicaid eligibility. So it's not just about the immediate family. We want to take a step out to the children and, follow, is there anybody else who might be leaving money? Or people are living longer. I have clients who are 100 years old and their 80-year-old child is living in a nursing home. Mom dies, and now that child's inheriting money just because we didn't update mom's estate plan when her child went into the nursing home. So we want to make sure that it's spread out, not just with the immediate family, but anybody else who might be leaving money. The inheritance risks that Medicaid eligibility, as I mentioned. If somebody dies, that nursing home spouse or that nursing home parent or that nursing home child is losing their Medicaid. So we want to make sure we change beneficiaries as soon as possible. Our financial power of attorney is our most important document in all of this. Okay. There isn't anything in the law that says who gets to make decisions for you or make changes to your accounts or sign your checks or make financial decisions if you do not appoint someone. Okay. Your spouse does not have any right to do those things for you. And that's shocking to a lot of people, but they don't. You have to have a power of attorney. So all the things that we as elder law attorneys can do to protect your money in a case of an immediate, nursing home need because somebody had a stroke or somebody was in a car accident. We can't do those things if we don't have the tools and we don't have the legal authority. So to sign contracts, to change deeds, to protect your home, to do financial planning, to do intentional gifting, creating an irrevocable trust, buying Medicaid annuities, changing beneficiaries, all of those things need to be done by power of attorney in a lot of cases. It's not just for when we get older. Everybody over 18 should have powers of attorney, but if you don't have them, they are an essential part of this plan to future-proof your life. We want to take care of this now, so if something happens in the future, your family members are armed with what they need to be able to protect you. Okay. And why that elder law focus power of attorney is more important than the regular general power of attorney is because it has extra language in there to allow for things like unlimited gifting. So maybe powers of attorney that you had when you were younger, just say they are for limited gifting, meaning you can gift up to the annual gift tax limit for the IRS, which this year is $19,000. Well, what do I have to get? What if I have to gift a house? What if I have to gift, an annuity account or a brokerage account to a disabled child? What if I want to take money and create an irrevocable trust? The power of attorney has to say that we can do those things. So we want to put those steps in place now so that they will be sufficient when we need them when we age. Okay. We're not going to wait until we age. We're going to do it now. So looking forward, we'll be prepared. Okay. So I just mentioned those. These are the things that we want it to have broad powers because we don't know what we're going to need to use it for until it's time to use it. And at that time, it might be too late for you to sign a new one if it doesn't give us enough power. So we want to have we want it to be comprehensive and grant broad powers. The healthcare power of attorney is equally important for somebody to make healthcare decisions for you when you're incapacitated. There are some laws in place in Pennsylvania that do permit a hierarchy of decision makers, but that might not be the person you want making the decision. Or it might lead to an equivalent number of individuals making a decision, and we need a tiebreaker. We need somebody to say, no, this is going to be the course of treatment. So it's important for you to appoint that individual, that they can have access to your medical records, communicate with your providers, and be able to make those healthcare treatment decisions for you if you're unable to do that for yourself. And the living will just goes along with that to allow you to be able to give guidance to your family about how you want them to decide for you when it comes to the end of your life, and how your feelings are on life-sustaining treatment in those conditions. Trusts are extremely important in all of this as well. I'm not going to tell you here to, regardless of what you saw on TV or what the financial advisors are telling you, not everybody needs a trust. Okay, so we just want to make sure that it's used in the right circumstances, and but an irrevocable trust is a tool that we have in our toolbox to be able to protect assets from long-term care exposure. Because Medicaid looks back 5 years to see what do we do with our assets. Ideally, we would be doing this 5 years before anybody needs nursing home care. And Medicaid's not going to look at those assets as being available to you to pay for home care. A revocable trust, while it has its place in estate planning, doesn't do anything to help protect our assets when it comes to long-term care. So we want to consider whether that's the right tool for us if that's what we have. And pre-planning versus crisis planning, this is where we sit with clients. They're either planning for the possibility of needing care down the road. So we're putting together those basic documents and making sure they're elder law focused, that we have put our tools in our toolbox. Or we're dealing with families in crisis. Somebody's already in the nursing home, somebody already needs care. So advanced planning, we say, usually does yield better results, but all is not lost if you haven't planned in advance. So we can still protect assets and still protect property, even in a crisis, as long as we act quickly. So we do both types of planning for nursing home, or I don't want to always say nursing home, but it could be long-term care expenses. So we can help families in both. So lastly, when do you want to consult with your elder law attorney? When you move. Okay, so if you move into a new state, we probably want to revise the documents. The 4 Ds: death, disease, divorce, and diagnosis. So anytime that you've had a change in your life, it's a good idea. Major life changes, financial changes. So you have a large inheritance, or you've sold your business, and that might be worthwhile to take a look at those estate planning documents. And changes in family structure. You've gone through a divorce, a new marriage, your children have gone through a marriage or divorce, new children have been born, new grandkids. So those are all good opportunities to take a look at those estate planning documents again. Okay, so if anything I quickly went over today, I know that was a lot, is jogging your memory, or calling you to action, please contact our office 724-942-6200 to schedule a consultation, or you can find more information on our website, zachbrownlaw.com. And I'm happy to toss it over to Jodi.
Sorry, kept that quiet and forgot to turn it off, but thanks, Colleen. My name is Jodi Amos. I am a managing partner with Four Rivers Wealth Management. We have 2 physical offices, one in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the other in Bonita Springs, Florida. However, we service clients all over the country, as for that matter, all over the world. I have been a financial advisor for over 35 years, and providing families and individuals really with the clarity that they need to prepare for a confident retirement. So as we all know, retirement is one of the biggest financial transitions in life. And today my hope is to cover really the top financial concerns that people face as they approach this transition. Things like longevity, inflation, taxes, lifestyle, and why it's so important to have a trusted advisor by their side as they make this transition. So my goal is to help you walk away today with insights and strategies so you can apply those to your own planning. Colleen, do you mind changing us and getting us started? Perfect, thank you. So one of the most common fears that I hear from clients is this, is will I outlive my money? Or I apologize, will I live longer than my money lasts? And that's a real concern today, right? Because so many people will be spending 20, 25, even 30 years in retirement, which is essentially a third of their lifetime. And you need your nest egg to last for that duration. So the challenge is that retirement is not a short event, and it hopefully and oftentimes is a long journey. So that means we need to think about how to stretch resources, balance your spending, while overseeing your investments and making sure that the income streams that you're relying on are really reliable. So one way we do this is by stress testing retirement plans. For example, we'll run projections assuming you might live to age 95 or 100 and asking it, would in fact your plan still hold up? If not, we're making adjustments before you're actually put into that situation. It's interesting, 30 some years ago when financial planning software came about, we were running these plans to age 82. And now the built-in life expectancy is 95. And for people that say, oh gosh, I won't be around, I got news for you. I've got parents in their 90s, one that's 91 and 92, and we also see clients well into their 90s. So longevity is a clear focus when we're managing for retirement. The key takeaway is that retirement is not really focusing so much on the finish line. It's making sure that the money lasts throughout the entire journey. Okay, next slide, please. So another major concern is really the double punch of inflation and market volatility. So in starting with inflation, right, even a modest 3%, which is somewhat of an industry standard, a modest 3% rate means that prices can double in about 24 years. So imagine retiring today and seeing your grocery bill or healthcare costs double by the time you're in your 80s, right? So that's a real erosion of purchasing power, and one that we spend a great deal of time looking into in assisting clients creating their financial plan. Next, in talking about market volatility. So if the market takes a downturn early in retirement, and you're already withdrawing funds, it can really do long-term damage to your portfolio, right? This is called sequence of returns risk, and it's one of the most dangerous threats to retirement scrutiny. And security, when you talk about market volatility or pullback in the market, right, there are corrections every so often within the market. If you retire and the market is off 10 or 20% and you start taking those distributions, you don't have the ability to recover, right, and build upon those assets. Once they're taken out, the growth is gone, right? So, but the solution isn't to avoid that risk completely. So that would leave you falling behind inflation. So it's really balancing growth and stability and strategies like bucket planning. Not sure if any or all of you are familiar with that, where we set aside short-term cash or liquid investments for immediate needs. And then intermediate investments for the next 5 to 10 years, and then long-term growth buckets, right? That can help you weather through storms while still staying invested and achieving that long-term growth. Okay, next slide. So I want to talk about taxes in retirement because for many retirees, taxes actually become one of the largest expenses in retirement, right? Withdrawals from IRAs, especially with regards to traditional IRAs or traditional 401ks, they're fully taxable as income. Once you hit your early 70s, required minimum distributions, also referred to as RMDs, kick in whether you need the money or not. This can push you into a higher tax bracket. The good news is that taxes are one of the few areas that you can make a big difference with planning. For example, timing Social Security can help reduce tax burdens on benefits. Roth conversions. So Roth conversions is interesting. So if it's done strategically over time, you can shift taxable assets into tax-free ones. One of the ways we look at Roth conversions is systematically, whereby we may be doing Roth conversions in piecemeal, making sure that you're not pushed into the higher tax bracket or into the next tax bracket. So we manage that strategically. But retirement tax planning isn't just about April 15th, right? It's about making proactive moves that stretch your portfolio and help you to keep more of what you've earned while trying to minimize as best we can the tax obligations associated with it. Okay, and then our next slide. So one of the biggest transitions in retirement isn't financial, it's actually emotional. For decades, many of you have been in the habit of saving and saving and saving. And the reality is that when you're asked to flip on that switch, or when you're ready to flip on that switch and start spending, it can be very overwhelming and uncomfortable knowing that outside of Social Security, there's really no other income coming in. Really, you're relying on perhaps the income within your portfolio or the growth within your portfolio to help carry it. So the reality is that retirement should be a time where you're enjoying the things that you've worked so hard for. But it has to be balanced, right? Enjoyment today with security for tomorrow. This is where having a personalized financial plan makes all the difference. Instead of wondering, hey, can I afford to take this trip? Or can I afford a new car? Am I spending too much? With a plan, you have clarity, right? You know when it's safe to spend and when it's better to save and how it all fits together. And when it's done well, retirement planning gives you both peace of mind and really the permission and freedom to enjoy the life that you deserve. It's not about surviving retirement, and I think that a lot of people view it that way. It's really about building for fulfilling retirement and working so in a manner through a plan that enables you to do so. So the next slide, please. So why does working with a financial advisor in retirement matter? Well, there are a lot of moving parts. We've just talked about some: inflation, taxes, income planning, risk management, and legacy planning, which Colleen just explained in depth. These all need to work together, right? So how does working with an advisor help? Well, income planning, right? So we're matching your essential expenses with guaranteed sources of income, such as Social Security, pensions, annuities. And then we're setting up guide rails around portfolio withdrawal so that you're staying within those spending limits. Tax optimization, coordinating the RMDs and any Roth conversions, as I mentioned before. Asset placement, Social Security strategies to extend the life of your portfolio. In addition, continuous monitoring, another variable. We stress test for inflation, healthcare costs, and the market downturns. And again, making adjustments as needed. Colleen's spent a good bit of time on legacy protection. We work closely with your estate or elder care attorney. One of the things that often is concerning is clients feel that once they've drafted a plan, they're done. And I always say that is not the case. It's really a baseline. So if a client comes in with a plan, every 5 years at a minimum, we're reviewing it with that client. You know, the attorney may not know that your wife has taken ill, or that your child has gotten divorced, or you have a special needs grandchild. And so in building that relationship and rapport with your advisor, it really forces us to kind of say, hey, we need to go back to Colleen, right? And let her know of this change so that she can amend the plan, really to meet the longevity goals and the legacy goals that you really are aspiring towards, right? As a financial advisor, I see oftentimes people work in silos. You have a CPA perhaps doing the tax planning, and the estate or elder care attorney doing their plan. The financial advisor just managing the investments. And one of the things we're really focusing on is making sure that the team comes together regularly and making sure it's not a one and done. The same holds true for your financial plan as well. There are things that you plan for today, but as we always say, life happens. And whatever you think, you know, retirement may look like for you, there are things just that come up in your life that change, and we need to accommodate for those. Another addition is my work with Liz Kennon, who I'm going to be turning it over to momentarily. So another way that we add value, or financial advisors, fiduciaries add value, is really to identify opportunities. Oftentimes, clients are unaware of when to file, how to file, etc., and obtain Medicare. And so I work closely with Liz and her firm. And so with that, Liz, I'll turn it over to you and you can talk further. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jodi. Hi, I'm Liz Kennon. My father and I run a health insurance brokerage, Kennon Insurance. I don't have my phone number up there, but I'll put it in the chat after I finish. He's been in business for all of my lifetime, and I've been with him for about 15 years. Can we go to the next slide? So, the first thing I want to talk about for any of you thinking about retiring before you're eligible for Medicare, there is a lot of stuff going on right now with the Affordable Care Act and getting insurance through, the ACA marketplace and everything right now. Retiring before Medicare, I don't have a lot of concrete answers right now because there's a lot of changes coming next year that I'm still working out. But some things you want to think about are, is COBRA available and what's the cost? Some people bridge the time between when they retire and when they're eligible for Medicare with COBRA, although it can be expensive and it might not last the whole time. What is the cost of coverage through Penny, which is a ridiculous name for a site for the Pennsylvania ACA marketplace, but I do work with looking at plans through that website. And then are ACA tax credits available to lower your premium based on your estimated post-retirement income? Again, this continues to change yearly based on legislative changes. Oftentimes I work with Jodi to figure out, how to maximize or minimize taxable income in these years between retirement and Medicare in order to see if you might be able to lower your health insurance premium, but through these tax credits that are available based just on taxable income and not assets. So that's something that Jodi and I do together. So that's something to think about if you're retiring before Medicare. You can reach out to me and we can take a look at what it might cost to get insurance, because that can be a big cost if you're not eligible for Medicare. Next slide. So when are you eligible for Medicare? At age 65, unless you have had legal resident status for less than 5 years. So if you're newly in the US and you haven't been here for 5 years, it may be delayed, but at 65 generally is when you're eligible. If you've been on Social Security disability for 24 months or have a diagnosis of ALS or end-stage renal disease, you can get it earlier than 65. I have some people in their 20s and 30s on Social Security disability, and they are on Medicare at a much earlier age. And then the other thing is if you do end up working past age 65, you can stay on your employer plan past age 65 and enroll in Medicare when you retire. So you don't have to enroll when you're 65 if you like your work plan. So we can kind of discuss, what the cost might be to go on Medicare versus staying on your work plan, and compare those options. And I'm happy to do that even if you end up staying on that work plan. Next slide. So the Medicare parts, you might hear of all these, Part A, Part B. What does everything mean? And you don't have to remember this. I will go over it again with you if you want to work with me. But just to give you an idea, Part A covers hospitalization, hospice, skilled nursing, and blood supply if you need it. So that's generally your hospitalization. Part B covers all your outpatient services like doctor's appointments, labs, x-rays, outpatient surgery. And then, so those two, are provided by the government when you turn 65. And then on top of that, you want to get prescription drug coverage and some sort of supplement plan to fill in what Part A and B doesn't cover. And you can do that through a Medicare Advantage plan. And in that situation, a private company takes over the Medicare contract. They provide your Part A, your Part B, your Part D, which is prescription drug coverage, plus additional benefits like dental, vision, hearing, fitness memberships. You see those advertised all of the time, especially here in Pittsburgh, UPMC for Life, Highmark, United Healthcare. They're always advertising their Medicare Advantage plans. The other option is a Medigap plan, also known as a Medicare supplement plan. In that situation, the private insurance company only provides additional coverage to what Medicare supplements under A and B, but it's very good coverage. So you're paying very little out of pocket when you go to the hospital, when you go to the doctor's office. With that, you have to get a separate prescription drug plan. So as you can see, it's kind of complicated as to which might be the best in your situation. And that's what we do at Kennon Insurance to, we look at your prescriptions, we look at your doctor needs and your health needs, and we try to figure out what might be the best option for you. Next slide. So what does Medicare cost? I mean, I think some people come in and think Medicare is free. It is not. Part A is free as long as you or your spouse has worked and paid into Medicare taxes for at least 10 years. So it's rare for me to find somebody who pays for Part A. Part B has a standard premium of $185 a month. It can cost more at higher income levels. So that's something we want to look at when we're looking at healthcare costs in retirement. Again, working with a financial planner or, teaming up with Jodi, we can look at ways to, have your income set so that maybe you're paying less for that Part B or paying that standard premium of $185. So that's something to definitely look at. The Medicare Advantage plans that I talked about in the last page, they run between $0 and $50 a month on top of that $185. And then Medigap plans are a little more expensive, usually $120 to $200 a month, and then another prescription drug plan can run $0 to $100 a month, depending on your needs. So, we can look at a cheaper option that doesn't provide quite as much coverage, but is less in premium, or maybe it's better for you to have, the best coverage out there and pay a little more per month. So that is definitely something we look at when analyzing your needs for Medicare. Next slide. So Medicare Advantage versus Medigap, I'll just go over this briefly. Like we talked about, Medicare Advantage, you have a lower premium, but you can have higher risk of out-of-pocket costs like co-pays and co-insurance in the event of certain medical expenses. You do get a bunch of extras like dental, vision, hearing, gym memberships, over-the-counter allowances, all the bells and whistles they've been throwing out. And it does include your prescription drug coverage. Medigap is your most comprehensive coverage, very low out-of-pocket costs with a higher premium, and you have to get a separate prescription drug plan. One nice thing about Medigap is there's no managed care. A lot of people worry about not having things approved by a private insurance company, which can happen with Medicare Advantage. It can't happen with Medigap. If it's a Medicare covered expense, it will be approved. That being said, a lot of the local companies, we don't see a lot of issues with approvals on Medicare Advantage, but that's something we continue to monitor as legislation changes. So next slide. So why use us? As I said, we can help determine when you're eligible for Medicare to avoid any late enrollment penalties. One issue is that if you don't enroll in Medicare when you're first eligible and you're not on employer coverage or some other, or employer coverage mainly, you can accrue late penalties for not signing up in time. And those late penalties stick with you for the rest of the time you're on Medicare, which for most people is the rest of their lives. So we want to make sure that you're getting on Medicare right when you're supposed to, so that you're not paying any penalties for the rest of your time on Medicare. Again, we can compare any benefits available to you through an employer with the costs and benefits of going on Medicare, even if you are still working. More and more, we're seeing the cost of insurance through your employer go up. It used to be you didn't pay anything, you paid very little. Now I see people paying hundreds of dollars a month for their employer coverage. So even if it's offered, it might make sense to go on Medicare when you're 65, even if you're still working. And that's definitely something we can analyze. And again, we want to help you compare various Medicare Advantage, Medigap, and Part D drug plans. And the next one's a big one to give you an idea of the projected cost of prescription drugs under Medicare. You probably hear on the news, they're always talking about negotiations about drug prices for Medicare with pharmaceutical companies. the introduction of GLP-1s have kind of, taken the costs of Medicare up a lot. So we continue to monitor how they're going to continue to price those, and what effect it might have on other drug prices. So that's definitely something we want to look at. A lot of times, some of these brand name drugs like Eliquis and Jardiance and some of these more expensive drugs under Medicare is definitely a consideration we want to take a look at. Again, things keep changing every month. It seems like with legislative changes that might affect Medicare costs and benefits, and also if you're not quite 65, how it might affect your healthcare costs when trying to figure out when you can retire. So that's definitely something we keep at the top of our list of things to be reading about and to share with our clients. One other big thing is our services are free to you. So I always say we're kind of like the travel agent for health insurance. We get paid a commission from whichever company you choose, and we're licensed with all the major insurers in the area. So we're completely independent. We're not, selling just UPMC or just Highmark. We're licensed with everybody. So we're completely independent. And like I said, we've had a lot of experience in this, and we only do health insurance. A lot of insurance companies also do life or, home and auto, but we think it is complicated enough that we want to focus all our attention on health insurance to provide our clients with the best experience and, the most comprehensive knowledge, so that we're not juggling a bunch of different, insurance companies and policies and everything in our heads. So that's kind of a summary of what we do. I know it's a lot of information, but it kind of gives you an idea of what we look at when somebody comes to us to ask about health insurance in retirement. So I will put my information in the chat as well, since I forgot to put it on my slides.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, ladies. You were good on time, amazing presentations. And so far we have not got any questions, but I'm definitely monitoring. I think we all can now, the Q&A. So if anyone has any specific questions for any of these ladies, and maybe while we're waiting to see, I don't know if there's anything amongst the three of you, a question or something as you heard each other's presentations that you maybe wanted to bring up, but I'll open that up now too, in case anybody has anything to add.
I'll ask a question of Liz. Liz,
Yeah.
how far out from reaching age 65 does somebody need to start investigating what their options are going to be? So, how many months in advance do you request that somebody gets in touch with you?
So we usually say 3 or 4 months. We can't even talk about plans for 2026 until October 1st. So anyone looking at information for next year, we can't even discuss it till October 1st. If you're turning 65 mid-year, we usually say 3, 4 months. But if you want to even, start to look before that, we're happy to talk to you. Especially if you're considering retiring before 65, we can, do some estimates for you to see what that might look like. Thank you.
All right,
Right back at you, Colleen. When do you think?
That was a good question, Colleen. As I get inch closer to that, I wanted the answer to that.
I was actually saying, Colleen, to you, what age do you have people mostly come in to start thinking about this estate planning?
Well, I mean, estate planning, we just finished up our big annual push for those college kids. They're back to school powers of attorney. So, I mean, really when somebody reaches the age of 18. So I'll, have parents reach out to me when their kids are, going to be 18 in a month, about getting those powers of attorney done. So really at any age, powers of attorney are for everyone. So as soon as they're turning 18, that's the time to kind of get started on that. Wills, usually people, although they're important at any age because, folks do accumulate some assets. I always say too, like worst case scenario, but you know, if somebody passes away in a car accident, there's going to be a settlement that comes in. And so even though that person maybe didn't have anything at the time that they thought they needed to plan for, there could be assets that are suddenly coming into their estate that need to be disposed of. Who's going to be in charge? Who, you know, how do you want those to be passed out? So I think, you know, wills and powers of attorney are really for everyone. You know, even those younger kids, if they, you know, might be leaving assets to parents who maybe those parents have complications, or, you know, I hate to say it, but I had a situation where he wasn't even quite that young, still a very young person to pass away, but he was in his 30s and his parents were divorced. And so that was kind of a yucky situation because they both have equal right to be the administrator for his estate. And so it's like, well, then we got to get them together and they have to make a decision between the two of them and they have to split everything. And so that would have been better if he had had a will, because then we wouldn't have had to drag his parents back together again to kind of handle things for him. So, but you know, really at any age, when we're looking at long-term care planning, we do not have a crystal ball to know when that nursing home need might be looming. But I would say the majority of my clients who are in nursing homes are probably in their mid 80s. So, you know, if we're looking at doing really aggressive Medicaid planning, usually we're starting that, you know, at least 5 years back. So I would say mid 70s. A lot of times we're starting to really talk about trusts but you know, I've had folks who were in nursing homes who were in their 60s too. So it just, you know, if there's a diagnosis of something that potentially is going to give us reason to believe that there might be a nursing home need. So I would say, you know, any dementias, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, MS, you know, things that rob people of the ability to take care of themselves, we want to start planning sooner. But otherwise, you know, most folks probably won't find themselves in a nursing home until they're in their 80s. So usually in your 70s, you're still okay if we're just kind of start our, you know, real aggressive Medicaid planning at that age. But basic estate planning is for anyone.
I just want to add one thing. I work with both of you in your firms. So, you know, one of the things that is so important as you're talking about, you know, filing deadlines, all sorts of things like that. I think it's important to remember, well, first of all, Liz, we didn't talk about, you know, your firm not only does Medicare, you also do private marketplace insurance. So you run the analysis for clients that have that need if they're leaving one job or if they're self-employed or if they're a small business, etc. And I guess for me, it's always a question of not waiting. You know, Colleen, you talked about crisis planning. It's never fun to be in the position. It's not to say that there aren't options. Liz, it's the same thing for you. If somebody misses the deadline, right, for filing for Medicare. But it's really working, I think, cohesively in these teams and relying on each other's expertise. Because sometimes you may hear something in a meeting, I may hear something in a meeting, and just really relying on our eyes and ears and bringing the expert to the table for the benefit of the client overall. And I think it's a great partnership and one where, like I said, it's something that it's not kind of a set and go. It's something that you do set, but oftentimes revise and amend as life happens.
All right, well, I'm monitoring. I feel like you guys had so much great information and questions to one another. We don't have any questions. We're at about the 45-minute mark. So the only thing I'm going to share is a shout out. We have an event coming up next Friday, the 26th of September. It's our 4th annual Learn, Care, Share event. It's a caregiver symposium. We have about 20 vendors that are going to be there. 6 amazing speakers. We have opportunities for self-care with chair massages, and Restore is going to be there. I think they have leg compression. So it's going to be not only like a day for self-care, but also to get information on different services and benefits are there to support you as a caregiver and also support your loved one. It's from 9 to 12 in the morning at the Loft Conference Center at South Point. If you go on to our website under our events page, you can register there. It's free. If I didn't say that, it's free. And you can come for any part of the morning, all of it. It's not a 3-hour commitment, but we'd love to see you there. Please spread the word. And that's about it for me. Unless anyone else has something to say, I will end for today and thank everyone for joining us. All right, well, it looks like we're good to go. Have a
Wait,
great
one more
day,
thing, one more
everyone.
thing.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
If
Liz.
anyone is on Medicare now and wants to look at their plans, the annual enrollment period does run from October 1st to December 7th. So we'd be happy to take a look at your options.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thanks so much. Everybody get out there and enjoy the day. And again, this will be available, I think, on most of our websites probably in the next week or two. If you think someone would be interested, we have a lot of great information on our resource hub, webinars, articles, etc. I'm sure that everyone else does as well on their websites. So definitely check out all three of our companies. Thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.